was directed by Fede Alvarez and it stars Jane Levy, Stephen Lang, Dylan Minnette, and Daniel Zavato. This film comes from the creators of the Evil Dead remake, and this film follows 3 teenage burglars who go house to house stealing stuff, causing ruckus, all to get money to have a better future. They find the house of a blind man and figure, oh, this is gonna be an easy job. And once they enter, they realize they're wrong. They're really, really wrong. They're wrong about things, wrong about a lot of stuff. And then stuff gets scary because the blind guy's crazy good at everything. For a horror movie like this to work, you have to have a cast of characters that the audience can really latch onto. I think it's safe to say that Jane Levy plays the main burglar of the group. She's the one that the audience is supposed to latch onto the most. And I've always thought she's been really, really good, even though she hasn't been in too many things. Remember the show Suburgatory on ABC? It was on before Modern Family was on. And I remember that show just a little bit, only because she was in it. And I remember watching every single episode right before Modern Family, because I like Modern Family, don't judge me. And I remember thinking the show wasn't that great, but the only reason why I watched was because Jane Levy's performance in that show was oddly good for just a throwaway, mediocre show. Anyway, she was also in the Evil Dead remake, and she was very good in that as well. She's really good at the horror genre. She's a really good leading lady. There's a lot of power in her performance, and she's not just the dumb chick who's gonna get stabbed in the movie. You can tell she's the smart one. She's very good on her feet. She's good at acting like a good lady in a horror movie. I review stuff. That's what I do. And in this movie, her character had the most background. She was the character that you really wanted to be with. She was really the only character in the movie you were totally rooting for. Just because everyone in this movie is kind of a terrible person. She was the least terrible of all of the people. Dylan Minnette plays the young, innocent one of the burglars. He's really in the group because he has the hots for Jane Levy, and I mean, who wouldn't? Am I right, Batman? I'm a piece of plastic with a consciousness built off of your imagination. So yes, I agree. Thanks, Batman. He felt a little too cliche for this movie because it is a very clever plot. This movie has a very smart plot, but this character, Dylan Minnette's character, I don't remember his name, he felt just way too cliche. He was the innocent kid of the group. He's the young dorky kid of the movie that is way too pretty to be a young dorky kid of the movie. So while I was watching this, there's a scene involving a cellar door, him and the cellar door. He was trying to open a cellar door. And I was like, I've seen this before. Maybe I dreamed this. This is so weird. This movie is a dream that I had. And then I realized, no, I'm thinking of the movie Goosebumps, because that kid was in Goosebumps. And there's a scene where he's also in a cellar. Long story short, this kid was in Goosebumps. Then there's that one guy who I don't feel like remembering. He played the character of Money. The character's name was Money. He's basically the character that the audience wants to die. He's the one that, in the horror movie, everyone's like, okay, that guy's gonna die, and we're gonna enjoy watching him die. He was another character that felt way too cliche to be in a movie this clever. He also reminded me too much of Jared Leto's character in the movie Panic Room, which is also a home invasion movie. I don't know. Just the fact that he reminded me of Jared Leto from a movie that was also a home invasion movie. It's too much. There's too much stuff going on in my brain. And last, but the exact opposite of the least, is Stephen Lang as the blind man. His presence was so demanding, and it really wouldn't have worked with a lesser actor. He had very few words, but when he did speak, you could really feel them. He was really a great character that could have just been some large hulking figure that killed teenagers. He really helped make things tense, which was really this film's strong suit. Fede Alvarez really has a strong understanding and love of horror films, which really showed through with the filmmaking of this movie. He understands tension and doesn't rely on jump scares. Even though the jump scares are there, they're very well placed and aren't just here's a loud noise for being a loud noise! Ha ha, we gotcha! Ha ha. There's build up to it, or rather lack thereof, which is amazing for a jump scare, and it was a part of the story. It wasn't just a bird flying on screen. It wasn't just a loud spooky noise when someone touches someone's shoulder. They were well placed jump scares, and I applaud them for actually making me jump a little bit. There's also a few really long, just unbroken shots in this film. It's a technique not often used in low-budget horror films, but when it is used, it's very well done because just like a long unbroken shot builds up so much tension, just like psychologically. And if you're a fan of that, just like really long shots in a horror movie, check out the film Silent House. You know Birdman? How it was made to look like it was one continuous shot? Yeah, Silent House was a horror movie that was made just like that. It was made to look like one unbroken shot. Even though the story's not great in that, it's still very good to check that aspect out. So there's that. This film is a lot more original than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be another throwaway horror movie until I saw the trailer. I only saw one trailer one time, and I was like, okay, let's do this. Because sound was so crucial to this movie, because it's these kids trying to hide from this blind man, you know, so they have to be dead silent. And sound was so well utilized in this movie. It was insane. The filmmakers knew when to stop the music, and the musical score in this movie was very, very well done as well. But they knew when to stop it. They knew when to have just silence, so that every footstep, every creak in the wood, every little breath made you scared. They really, really utilized the power of silence, and I have to applaud them for that as well. Everything from cinematography, sound design, directing, it was all so well put together that it was a very, very well-made movie from the filmmaking perspective, which made the downsides so much more apparent, which was really just the writing. It was a powerful idea, a great idea backed up with some great filmmaking, but a lot of the writing aspects were kind of really bad. There was some really, really bad dialogue in this movie, just like the way they spoke to each other didn't feel fluent. They didn't feel like people, they felt like a script. They felt like scripted people talking to each other with scripted words. Which I've noticed this being a problem with some foreign directors. No, I'm not saying, they suck because they're foreign. I'm just saying they're writing something in a language that's not their native language. Like Guillermo del Toro does amazing work. Visually, his movies are all amazing. But you look at something like Pacific Rim, and the dialogue tends to fall flat a little bit, just because it's not the language they were brought up in, and it's understandable. But it was very apparent in this movie, and it did take you out of it just a little bit. Also, near the end, it drags on a little bit. It drags. Like, the last 15 minutes of it could have been cut down, even though that probably would have made it a short film, because this movie's fairly short. But the last 15 minutes they felt like they took forever. There was also a flash forward at the very beginning of this movie. Like the first frame of this movie was a huge spoiler. It was a flash forward, but like a terribly placed flash forward. So like, near the end of the movie, you didn't have as much suspense as you would have, because you're like, okay, well, no matter what happens in this, they have to get to that point. Which was really frustrating, because I think it could have been so much more suspenseful, and like that last 15 minutes maybe wouldn't have dragged as much if we didn't know what was going to happen in like the last 5 minutes. Which ultimately, it was a lackluster ending, and like, it's very difficult to end a horror movie. Horror movies are very difficult to stop. And this one didn't do it super well. This film reminded me of like a really good sandwich with like kind of stale bread. You know, like the in-between was really, really good. Like the middle of it was fantastic. But the two pieces that were on top and bottom of it, a little bit stale. Overall, it's very nice to see a horror movie that's trying something new. It's not a prequel, it's not a sequel, it's not a reboot, it's not a remake. It's just something. It's its own thing, and that I gotta give it props for that, because there's not too many horror movies that are very original anymore. I wouldn't say this was like the best of the year. Like every year there's like a really good horror movie, like The Babadook, It Follows, The Witch, which is this year's best horror movie in my opinion. It's definitely not The Witch, but it's still worth your time, and it's worth a couple bucks to go see at the theaters. So even though it had some lackluster writing, the filmmaking in it was still very good and very original. So I'm going to give Don't Breathe a 7.9 out of 10. I had a hard time doing this one because I wanted to give it an 8. I really, really wanted to give it an 8, but I feel like it wasn't a full 8. Just because that writing and that ending, like some of that dialogue and that last 15 minutes just took me out of it. It could have been much better, but it's alright. It's a very original movie, still worth your time. Definitely go see it, because it had a lot of good twists in it. Like, there were some twists in that story that got me. Like, with horror movies, you can predict everything. But with this one, unless you've seen too many trailers, which apparently the trailers did spoil this, there were some really good plot twists in this movie. So stay away from trailers, go see this movie, it's a good time. Definitely watch it. It's worth at least one watch. So anyway, check out Slacker Productions. We're having a lot of really good projects in the works. Slacker Gaming just came out, so you can check that out weekly. We have our first video up, so if you want to support us a little bit on that end, that'd be pretty nice. And, you know, as always, watch movies, my friend.